Harinam Sankirtan ki
Jai.
I may start straight today the lecture since I
Sure,
think it may take a
absolutely.
little bit more time. So, okay. So offer some leaves and flowers to the Bhagavatam since we are beginning our series on Brahma-stuti. So trying to pray for the blessings of Srimad Bhagavatam, Grantaraj, Grantavatar, who is non-different from Krishna himself, so he may bless me and us in this new attempt of service while explaining Brahma-stuti. So Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Brahma-stuti ki jai, Gaur Hari Bol. So, One second. This goes here.
You need more light, Maharaj.
Sorry?
More light.
Can we? Let's see how it works with further light. We can try. We can try.
Put that on, yeah.
Just to see. Let's see if it adds to the, or maybe in a while, will be darker.
For your podcast, though, it's better to have more light.
Yeah, that's for sure. Let's see. Yeah. It's okay. Not too much light for you.
That's good.
Okay.
Oh, good. Krishna.
Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanam Jana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nam Shreshtam Manumapi Sattiputram Matra Sharupam Rupam Tasya Grajamaru Purim Maturim Gastavatim Radha Kundam Giribaram Maho Radhika Madhavasam Praptu Yasya Pratitha Gripaya Shri Gurum Tannatasmi Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nikhila Shruti Mole Ratnamala Diti Nirajita Padapankajant Haji Mukta Kulairupashyamanam Paritashram Harinam Samshrayami Anarpitacharim Chirat Kadunayavatirna Kalu Shmarpaitamunnatujvalarasam Svabhakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundara Dyuti Kadamba Sandipita Sada Hridaye Kandaresh Purato Vasatinandana Ajanulambita Bujjo Kanakavadato Sankirtanaika Pitaro Kamalaya Takshu Vishwambharo Duyavaro Jugatharmapal Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataru Vandeham Shri Ramakrishna Vaicharanashuku Shukado Paramananda Sundaro Shubalo Priya He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Radhe Vrindavaneshwar Adishi Karunamrita Vahini Kripaya Nijapadabja Dasyanmayam Pradiyatam Bhaktya Vihinaya Aparadha Lakshaya Kiptaschakamaditarangamadhye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapanam Vrinde Namaste Charanarvindam Vrinde Namaste Charanarvindam Srila Gurudev ki jai, Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Sri Sri Gaur Nityananda ki jai, Sri Sri Brajanath Haladar ki jai, Nishrimha Bhagavan ki jai, Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Sri Brahma-stuti ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanand, Hari Hari Bol. So, pranam to all of you. Good afternoon. Thanks so much for coming. And today we are beginning a new series of lectures in this connection about Sri Brahma-stuti or Brahma-stava, sometimes called, which means basically the prayers of Sri Brahmaji. Very, very important section of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And since it's a very audacious project, we have begun by offering some flowers and tulsi leaves at the feet, if you will, of Srimad Bhagavatam, who is none different from Bhagavan. It's a literary incarnation, as sometimes it's called, Granta Avatar, Granta Raj, our supreme form of revelation. So again, we are beginning this new series today about one of the most important sections of our most important scripture, basically, which is the Srimad Bhagavatam. Grantaraj or Pramana Shivamani, Srila Jiva Goswami established very nicely in his Tattva Sandarbha, how among all forms of Pramana or scriptural evidence, Srimad Bhagavatam occupies the supreme throne. And that's why Mahaprabhu embraced the Bhagavatam in such a unique way. Our Goswamis, basically all their books are commentaries or books around the Srimad Bhagavatam and so on. Our whole theology surrounding around this, especially this idea that so much characterizes our Sampradaya, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Shayam, which we find in the Bhagavatam. It's one line, but some people may say you are making too much out of only one line. So you can tell that to Srila Jiva Goswami, who wrote the whole book, Krishna Sandarbha, whole treatise about explaining that one line and saying, yes, we are making a lot about this line because there is a lot in that line. So anyhow, and interestingly, this idea that so much defines our Sampradaya is being played out, as we will see in next class, in this section of the Bhagavatam that prefaces the Brahma-stuti, which is the Brahma-VIMOHANA-LILA. Today we will give an introduction of that. Today will be an introductory class, and the next class we will have also will be a second introductory class, and then the third class we will begin with the first verse. And let's see if we can see only one verse per class. I'm not so sure.
How many verses in that chapter, Maharaj?
The whole chapter has almost like 60 something verses, but the prayers of Brahma himself are 40 verses. So, I mean, do not expect that we'll finish that while I'm in Kansas. That's for sure. I don't know when that will happen, when that will end, and no problem. There is no end to Harikata, Anantakata. Uddhav this says that. And that's our aspiration. Kirtaniya Sadahari, forever engaged in Kirtan. Nityam Bhagavata Sivaya, forever engaging. Satatam Kirtayantama, Katayantaschamam Nityam. Oh, we have all these expressions in Shastra. Nityam Sada, always perpetually engaged in singing and speaking about Krishna. For us, the goal of doing that is that we will have the chance of doing that even more. We speak about Krishna so we can speak more and better about Krishna ad infinitum. So the particular section that we will be studying is the Brahma-stuti again, which are the prayers of Sri Brahma after the Brahma-VIMOHANA-LILA, after his bewilderment, as we will see today, what causes Brahma's bewilderment. And in those prayers, Brahma will present basically, if you want, like the logic of love, the philosophy that underlies the experience of bhava. No, we have on one side tattva, and another side we have bhava, or sometimes called rasa, siddhanta, and rasa. No? We have the philosophical ground on which we educate ourselves, and on that foundation, eventually the world of spiritual emotion will manifest in our hearts. So the love we want to attain, bhava, prem, we could say is a philosophical emotion. Because we can be emotional without any need of siddhanta. I mean, you can be emotional in a material sense of the term, but the goal of our life is another type of emotion, an emotion which is informed by philosophy, if you will, an emotion which is carved by siddhanta, if you will. There is certain perimeters, certain parameters which will give rise to bhava. Bhava is the goal of sadhana. We engage in sadhana bhakti, so we can attain bhava bhakti, which is the first ray of the sun of Prem. Nitya sidasya bhavasya sadyat bhavatam prakatyam skriti satyada. So this Brahma-stuti contains, in other words, all this philosophical ground. And now in one sense, is our own whole philosophy is summarized in these 40 prayers of Brahma. It's a very, very interesting, important section. And we will be speaking about the day after tomorrow in our second class. Many interesting things concerning this section. One of them also is that our Srila Prabhupada passed away from this world while translating this particular section also. So that has also very underlying and deep meaning. It's not just coincidence. He passed away in that particular chapter. No deeper connection. No, there's a lot of connections in that sense as well. So we will see how Brahma then will describe the logic of love in the context of very heartfelt prayers, as we will see. The emotions in Brahma's prayers are escalating more and more as he approaches the end of his stuti, the end of his prayers to Krishna. So I thought about sharing a series on this topic since my Guru Maharaj, he recently spoke about Brahma-VIMOHANA-LILA some time ago. He was planning to speak about Brahma-stuti, but somehow he got caught in the Brahma-VIMOHANA-LILA and he was not able, quote unquote, he was able to remain trapped there. He got the adhikar to not being able to get out from there, which is not speaking. Like once I remember I met one god sister of mine, and she studying Chaitanya Charitamrita for some time already. So next time I saw her, I asked, "How is your study of Chaitanya Charitamrita?" And she told me, "Oh, Maharaj, I got stuck in the Ramananda Sambar." And I say, "Wow, I pray I may get stuck there forever someday." That's the fruit of our study. We study, we get stuck in one part that we feel some affinity for, and we enter that portal forever, because each section of the Bhagavatam is like a portal in which we can project ourselves eternally in service, basically. So my Guru Maharaj likes to say, there's one, if you pay close attention, there will be one blank page in the Bhagavatam. That's not a mistake from the editors or the publishers. That blank page is for you to fill with your own life and testimony in divine service. You are expected to become part of the Bhagavatam through your eternal life of service. So my Guru Maharaj, as I mentioned, spoke about this, about Brahma-VIMOHANA-LILA, got stuck there, transcendentally speaking. And also he spoke about Brahma-stuti like in 2017, like 5 years ago, but he only got to the first 20 prayers, so the first half of them. So I asked him if he agreed and he wanted to share his blessings to try to go in detail with each of the verses of Brahma-stuti, and he agreed. So here we are with the blessings of the Vaishnavas.
Who is that, Prabhu?
Sorry?
Who is that? Who's your guru?
Srila Bhaktivedanta Tripurari Maharaj, your god brother, who is there in the altar, first picture there. So again, next class, which is what? Wednesday? No, Tuesday. Tuesday.
So just to clarify, we're coming to your house tomorrow, right?
Right.
For the kid. Okay.
What time? 6 o'clock?
We continue later then. I'm in class.
Sorry.
So in our next class, which is Tuesday, we will basically not start with the first verse, as I mentioned, but try to explain a little bit the theological implications and significance of the Brahma-VIMOHANA-LILA, of the Brahma-stuti, because it's important to understand the background of this. Also, today I wanted to speak about that. Today I would like to share the context in which this Brahma-stuti comes, because one thing is to say, okay, let's begin with the first prayer of Brahma. Another thing is to see the whole background in which takes Brahma to express himself, and so in those prayers. That will help us to make much more sense of why he's praying in that particular way. Because as we say, a text without a context becomes a pretext to make a play of words. So in order to make as much sense as we can of what Brahma is saying, we'll try today to manifest, to explain the background, the context in which Brahma's prayers are expressed. So today we will turn to the 2 previous chapters of the Brahma-stuti. Brahma-stuti, the prayers of Brahma, appear in 14th chapter of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So today we will go through the chapters 12 and 13. The 2 previous ones, which will describe basically the killing of Aghasur and the bewilderment of Brahma. All of this quite connected and converging into this Brahma-stuti, or the prayers of Brahma. So I will share a summary today. I hope I will be able to do so in an hour or so. Let's see. We may got stuck there as well, so no problem if that happens. But actually, to begin with, and to give even further context to this story, before going to chapter 12 and Aghasura-Lila, let's travel a little bit even further back and go to the very beginning of the cycle of creation. When, as you know, Brahma will be the first manifest being, and so on. So please fasten your seatbelts, and there we go. But, well, before that, let me share some brief words about Brahma in itself. What's Brahma? What does it mean, Brahma? What's the role of Brahma? Just to have an idea also about the personality. Srila Rupa Goswami describes Brahma in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu as Adhikrita Das, as exhibiting a type of dasya. In which sense? Brahma is not yet in the lila. When a cycle of creation begins, and Brahma is there, any of us can be Brahma. I mean, it's not so easy, but it's a position to attain. It's a post, if you will. So it means Brahma is not participating in the lila. Still, he has not a role of service there. So his dasya ras, if you want to call it dasya, he calls Adhikrita dasya, Rupa Goswami is saying, which means he's a servant of Krishna in the sense of he's performing an important function, which is architect of the universe, in Krishna's service. I mean, he's a devotee of Krishna, although he's not yet part of his entourage in the lila. But he wants to be, as we will see. He will have that desire. So in that dasya, if we want to put it, that he's the architect of the universe. He's the presiding agent on Rajaguna, who has to do with creation and movement and so on in this world. And he's empowered by Bhagavan to act on his behalf in that particular function. He's the architect of the universe, of what Bhagavatam calls Visarga. Bhagavatam speaks about Sarga and Visarga. So Visarga means the one who creates, but the ingredients are already provided by someone else, if you will. So Sarga has to do with the manifestation of those ingredients, which again are not coming out of nothing. The Gaudiya Vaishnavas are not following this doctrine called creatio ex nihilo in Latin, which Christians follow, which is God creating the world out of nothing. For us, God exists since time without beginning, and all his Shaktis exists without time, in time without beginning. So we exist without beginning, the world exists without beginning, Krishna exists without beginning. But the world has beginnings and end in cycles, but that cycle of beginning and end doesn't have a beginning. Like another topic, but just a brief mention of that. So Brahma is acting, whoever is Brahma in that particular cycle is acting as a servant of Bhagavan in the context of being the architect of the universe. And of course, to do so, you need to be pretty much intelligent. It's not just like, okay, you want to be the architect of the universe, you have to be pretty capable. So Brahma is the very personification of refined intellect. We could say he's the topmost scientist of all in the multiverse. There's nobody as intelligent as Brahma in the material different planes. His material plane is the highest one. If you want to analyze the hierarchy of planet Earth and the heavenly planets, you have eventually Satyalok or Brahmalok. So the place of highest intellect, that's Brahma. Very capable, very learned personality, very 4 heads. At least the one we know and who appears in the Bhagavatam is the one with 4 heads. There are some Lilas in which other universes have other Brahmas with even more heads. So you can imagine even more thinking capacity. But just having 4 heads is, I mean, with 1 head we are going crazy. So imagine with 4. He has the capacity of deal with those 4, which means he's thinking in the 4 directions. A pretty smart personality. Also, one name of Brahma is Biti, which means someone who abides very, very seriously by the rule, very, very paka follower of Vedic rules. So that has a very important implication in the Brahma-Vimohana-LILA, as we will see. And again, this is not an easy post to attain. It is said in Shastra that you can attain the position of Brahma if you perform your Varna ashram duties perfectly for 100 births. Try to imagine, just to perform them perfectly for 1 week, it's too much. So many rules and what to do, what not to do is so complex. It's not our path, but in case you want to be a Brahma, that's basically the way. 100 lifetimes of perfectly, without any single mistake, perform that, you become Brahma. So that shows how correct Brahma is. If you have to be that correct to be him, whoever is successful in that person is very expert in following and knowing how to do everything perfectly according to the Vedic rule. Which again, our interest goes beyond that, goes to the direction of Vrindavan, where they apparently are breaking all rules and following the rule of love. Love makes its own rules, basically. And we will find how this plays out when Brahma goes and witnesses what's going on in Vrindavan, basically. So again, some thoughts, some words about Brahma, who Brahma is. So let's go back to the beginning of the creative cycle, when Brahma is being born, as we know, from the lotus that is expanding from the navel of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. So Brahma is the firstborn entity in the multiverse. So he's born from that. The navel is kind of an umbilical cord coming from the navel of Padmanabha, means basically that, someone who has like a navel, like lotus navel or whatever. So somehow Garbhodakashayi Vishnu is Brahma's father and mother combined. It's not that he's born in a, if you will, a standard way. So Brahma becomes aware of his own existence sitting on that lotus, but as you know, he starts to look around him. Nothing is there, only himself. So he starts to do inquiry, to inquire about his source. Now, he sees the lotus, he sees the navel. Navel, is that? Yeah.
The
Stem. Sorry, the stem of the lotus. So he starts to go down to see what's my source, basically. He understands I was born from here. What's my source? He's looking for his source. Tattva Jignasa. He's inquiring. So eventually we know the stem never ends. So he goes back to the lotus. And eventually he hears one word, which is the very first word in this universe, very interestingly, which is ta-pa. 2 syllables. Ta-pa. Ta-pa. Generally, tapa means fire. Sometimes we translate as austerity, but literally means fire. Of course, the austerity is fire. It means enter into certain fire. Pratyahara. Like try to turn inward. Try to close your senses to the world of mundane experience and try to close your eyes and see, if you will, and try to see inward. The tapa implies the knowing that I need help, basically. I close my eyes and I turn inward and try to look for my source to receive shelter and help. So long story short, I have to be brief, on one level at least. So eventually Brahma, he engages in tapa, which is another way of saying meditation. This is a type of fire to close your senses and to try to access your inner world and connect with your source. And eventually he has darshan of Sri Krishna. Krishna manifests to Brahma. Krishna is in one way Brahma's father, as we mentioned. And Krishna appears in front of Brahma in Gopa Vesh. Gopa Vesh is dressed as a cowherd boy, interestingly. So that's the darshan Brahma has. But Krishna appears as a cowherd boy, but not with the full informality that he will exhibit in the Braja Lila. He appears dressed as a cowherd boy, but in the mood of Brahma, being in Guru Bhava, like a guru instructing the disciple. So Krishna will appear and will exhibit certain mudras, Gyan mudra, like blessing the disciple, and so on. And interestingly, Krishna will present himself more as Narayan, but dressed as in Gopavesh. No? So Narayan is not dressed as a cowherd. So Brahma is like, okay, he will need to clarify these details eventually, as we will see. So he has a more effective bhajan. If you don't have a clear picture of your deity, your bhajan may be a little bit like discombobulated, if you will. So it is said that in this moment, the Bhagavata narrates in the second canto, Brahma receives Chaturshloki Bhagavat, which means 4 essential verses that are the seed from which the whole Srimad Bhagavatam expands. You find them in second canto, 9th chapter, beginning with Ahami Vasame Bagri and so on. So the seed of the Bhagavatam is given there by Krishna to Brahma. Remember, Krishna is Brahma's guru. Here we have the beginning of the Brahma Sampradaya. I won't enter into the details of the Chaturshloki. That's a whole series altogether. And eventually Brahma also receives from Krishna Gopal mantra also, which is the most important Diksha mantra in our Sampradaya again. And interestingly, Brahma, by receiving those impressions by his guru, he develops a desire to establish with Krishna a relationship in Sakya Bhava, a relation with Krishna in friendship. And it is described in that part of the Bhagavatam, second canto. Krishna is shaking hands with Brahma, like you will do with a friend. Generally, the guru won't give you the hand and how are you, my disciple? But Krishna is shaking hands with Brahma, and Brahma becomes like touched by that approach from Krishna. He expressed, the Bhagavatam uses the word Sakya. So interestingly, for those who would like to think the Gaudiya Sampradaya is exclusively only about Madhurya Ras or Manjari Bhav, we see the very first member of our Sampradaya expressing a desire for Sakya, Sakya Bhav. So it's important to understand, although Madhurya Rasa Manjari Bhav is, as we said yesterday, I think, or some of these days, the highest reach of our Sampradaya in terms of ecstatic reach, although there's other people who may have other types of inclinations, and that's not wrong, if you will. No? Yeah, Madhurya Rasa is the sweetest of the sweet, but not every person likes sweet that much. One may say, which is objectively speaking the sweetest fruit? And someone may say, I don't know, mango. But someone may say, well, but my favorite fruit is grapes. And someone say, but that's not the sweetest. Okay, but that's my favorite. Subjectively, that's my favorite. Objectively, yeah, that's the sweetest. But I go for grapes due to whatever samskar. So similarly, we could say, yeah, the sweetest is Madhurya Bhav, but my favorite may be someone else, someone may say. And there's place for that. So we have to be very careful that in the name of speaking about rasa, we will end up engaging in racism. Not racism. Racism. To be racist in the context of rasa. This is the highest thing, the only thing, everyone should go here, everyone else is in Maya, is in fear. No. You are a racist, with all respect. So be careful about that. And this Lila is showing that from the very beginning of creation, very first created being, inclined towards Sakya Bhava. And not only him, that's my point. So that's another series altogether also, Sakya Bhava in our Gaudiya Sampradaya. My Guru Maharaj is writing a whole book about that of 700 pages or something. There you will have your detailed description in that connection. So Brahma expresses this desire to Krishna. I would like to relate with you in terms of friendship. And Krishna appreciates Brahma's desire, and we will see how that desire takes some time to eventually blossom. So some time passes, some years of those of Brahma who are quite longer than ours. So Brahma in this context is chanting his mantra, he's engaging in his duty as the architect of the universe, and he's gradually developing his desire for this Sakya Bhava. So from beginning of creation until we reach Dwapara Yuga. the particular Dwapara Yuga in which Krishna is descending in Braj on earth, which is some 1,000 years ago. So we know Krishna descends in Vrindavan. He's performing his Nara-lila, human-like pastimes on earth as a child. And at this precise moment, we are getting closer to, again, the Brahma-Vimohana-Lila and so on. And it's important to mention that, as we said yesterday, the Lila of Krishna on earth has a chronological unfolding. Krishna is born, he's growing, he becomes a child, he becomes a teenager. So there are mainly 3 ages of Krishna expressing themselves in the Lila: Kumar, Poganda, and Kishore. And there are 3 main corresponding emotions with those ages: Vatsalya, Sakya, and Madhurya. When you are a baby, your world, your emotional world revolves around your parents. You don't have friends when you have 1 year old. It's your mom and your dad. Mostly your mom, but your dad is also in the picture somewhere. But you are not aware of friendships and romance and what. That's Kumar, Vatsalya centered. Then you have Poganda. That's Sakya centered. When you grow a little bit more, you start to have friends. You start to care less about your parents. And you want to be all day long playing with your friends, and your parents are calling you, come back home. No, thank you. No, lunch is ready. I remain with my friends, and so on. And then when you are a teenager and so on, that your life revolves around Madhurya. You have a girlfriend, you have a boyfriend, and you stop visiting your friends and going out with them because you are spending time with your girlfriend or boyfriend. And so your life starts to revolve around that. Of course, then another ages come, but Krishna remains an eternal teenager. He's Nitya Kishore, eternal adolescent. In this world, it's not very nice you are eternal adolescent. It seems like you do not grow further than that. But for Krishna, it fits perfectly. And for us, it's another way. After our teenagehood, we may again center our life in Vatsalya because we become parents, and our parents become important, but mostly to come and take care of our child, basically, or something like that. Other dynamics, basically. So my point is, in this particular moment of the Lila, prior to Brahma-Vimohana-Lila, Krishna is in his Sesh Kumar. Each one of the 3 ages also are divided into sub-stages. So Sesh Kumar means the end of his, an infancy. The Kumar, the first age. He's reaching the end, and he's about to enter Poganda, which is childhood age. So again, I'm giving just a brief summary. My Guru Maharaj really lectures a lot about this. So this in connection to Brahma in the beginning of creation and how Krishna is presenting his Lila on earth. So now let's go to chapter 12 of the Bhagavatam. Well, AGHASURA-LILA will be presented mostly, and in that connection, Brahma-Vimohana-Lila. So in chapter 12, one day we have, the Bhagavatam is mentioning, Krishna is telling to his friends, today we will have a picnic in the forest. Till this moment, the Krishna and his friends never ate outside of their houses. They always ate with their mom and dad and family. But now it was the first day when they were able to be freed from the grasp of their parents, the parental affection, and they were free to go to the forest and have picnic. And you can imagine, for a child, this is like, wow, the whole world of adventure is waiting for us there, and so on. So everything is organized accordingly. All the kids are totally excited about that. So Krishna is heading to the forest with his friends and calves. Asankhya, the Bhagavatam says. Asankhya means uncountable. It's not possible to count how many of them were there. So interestingly, to say that day that Krishna went to the forest with his friends, typically he will go with his elder brother, Balaram, who is the Maryad Purusha in the life of Krishna, which means the one who is taking care that Krishna is not misbehaving, because Jashoda projected her Vatsalya on Balaram and said, you are Krishna's older brother, so take care of him. And interestingly, yes, Balaram is older brother of Krishna only by 8 days. So how much you are older than you, but somehow Jashoda put that identity on Balaram. You are elder brother, you have to take care of him. And if he does something wrong, you report that to me. But this day, Balaram didn't go with Krishna because this day was Balaram's monthly birthday. There's a yearly birthday that we all know, and it's also one monthly birthday in which, according to the constellation, you were born. The day on the month in which that constellation is in that particular place, some celebration is there. So it's like his monthly birthday. So that was the day. So Baladev was retained at home, and the Vatsalya camp, if you will, was celebrating his birthday there. So Krishna was not able to go with him with some purposes, as we will see. So Krishna is going with his friends. They are taking their lunch, how do you say, lunch packs? Tiffins, yeah. So Krishna and his friends are taking the tiffins and playing on the way. And there's a very detailed description in the Bhagavatam about this, very beautiful. We cannot, unfortunately, go detail by detail, but hopefully you are becoming tempted to go yourself and go through every single verse. Sukadev Goswami, as we all see, he sees this scene and says, Krita punya punya. Now, what piety, what virtuous acts these friends have accumulated in the past to be able to play like that with Krishna. Krita punya punya. He's expressing like chamatkar, like astonishment by wondering about the good fortune of the Gopas. So the kids are stealing each other's tiffins. Still, they are not sitting for lunch, but on the way to the forest, they are already doing some misbehaving and stealing each other's tiffins and throwing to other ones, and the kids are running after them and so on. So, long story short, at that moment appears Aghasura. We spoke a little bit the other day about Aghasura. Aghasura is this giant serpent, which is the very personification of sin. Agha means sin, and Asura means basically demon. We translate as demon. Also, Asura, interestingly, can also mean Ra comes from Ramante, to enjoy, and Asura means very quickly. So Asura means I want to enjoy as quick as possible, basically. I don't care for the consequence. I want enjoyment now. Whatever. So Aghasura was there, the younger brother of Putana and Bakasura, who were already killed by Krishna. So Aghasura is there to take revenge. And he assumed the form of an 80-mile, considerably giant python, you say? Python? Okay. So open his mouth and remain there still, like a statue without moving. Like a giant cave. I mean, he was so big that if you are too close to that, you don't realize, like, you don't see the bigger picture. Say, oh, it's a snake. It seems like, wow, giant cave. So Aghasura was thinking, I will kill Krishna in a different way than the way that other demons tried to kill him, and they didn't succeed in that. So I will try to kill him passively. I won't run after him and try to swallow and hit him, but I will just open my mouth and wait. And when he enters with his friends, close my mouth, end of the story. So as we mentioned the other day, Krishna and his friends are wandering nearby the forest, and Krishna's friends see this huge hole, and they say, oh, a new cave. A new cave. And again, they are in the full exploratory spirit. They are in we will have lunch here for the first time. We are totally free to explore the forest as we like. And here we find this incredible cave. Who knows what adventures are waiting us inside? Let's go to the cave. But as we mentioned the other day, one of the friends said, it doesn't seem a cave. It seems it's actually the mouth of a python. And it seems that this python is here. We never saw him before here. So probably it just came here, and probably it's here with the intention of killing us all. So generally, if you realize that, you'll say, let's run away from here. But Abhay, as we spoke to the Abhayatva. Abhay means fearless, and Abhayatva will mean in Sanskrit fearlessness. So that's the characteristic of Krishna's friends, of Sakya, this Vishramba, or deep confidence. Krishna will protect me. One of the 6 limbs of Sharanagati. Rakshishyati Vishwasu. I have Vishwas, I have firm conviction, Krishna will protect me. So they had this realization at the utmost. So they say, let's enter. But it's a python. Krishna will protect us. Oh yeah, you're right. And they run, singing and dancing and entering into the mouth of death, if you want to call it like that, but totally beyond that, because they have full trust in Krishna. And of course, Krishna will protect them, as we will see. So the boys entered, and the calves who were with the boys ran after them as well. At this time of the age of Krishna, he and his friends are not yet old enough to take the cows to, how do you say? Yeah. So they're taking the calves. So the calves run after the boys and enter also Aghasura. But Aghasura didn't close his mouth because Krishna didn't enter yet. So he was waiting for his main meal, if you will. But actually, interestingly, it is described that Krishna didn't want that his friends enter there. But they enter, and Krishna was not able to stop that. So we may wonder, how does happen? What is the background of that? Krishna was against that to happen, but it happened. So let me share some words of Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who is commenting in the Bhagavatam in this particular section. And he says, one should not think that Krishna's Satya Sankalpa Shakti, which means the potency that fulfills every desire of him, one should not think that this Satya Sankalpa Shakti was thwarted because Krishna could not stop the boys from entering the serpent's mouth, though he wanted to. On the other hand, Krishna's devotees had a desire to be saved by Krishna if by chance they were swallowed by the demon. Of the two desires, the desire of the devotee prevails, according to the principle that the Lord is controlled by his devotee. This was perfectly arranged by Krishna's ever-watchful Lila Shakti, which harmonizes everything by removing all seeming contradictions. Astonished, Krishna concludes, the Lila Shakti has made this seemingly unfavorable arrangement with the desire to put me, who abound in prema, in a compassionate mood, karuna rasa, on seeing this unfortunate situation. It astonishes me how she controls me, the very form of all rasas and the king of all lilas. So that's how Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes Krishna's old thinking. How this Lila Shakti is controlling me. I'm supposed to be the controller, but I realize I'm controlled by, as we spoke yesterday, by love, by prema. In this way, Krishna was the only one remaining to enter Aghasura. So Krishna entered Agha. But as we know, he entered Agha and he started to expand himself, to enlarge himself. So when Agha will try to close his mouth, he was not able. So his friends and calves will not be like smashed by Agha, because Krishna was so big that Agha was not able to basically to move almost his mouth. So Krishna expanded to such a point that, as we know, he killed Aghasura by, how to say in English, suffocation. Okay, so Aghasura was suffocated and died. And it is said that the Bhagavatam mentioned that the friends and calves also were dead, but were revived after this. But actually, the commentators mentioned they were dead in separation from Krishna, not because of suffocation. So they were just missing Krishna so much that they became as if dead. This is one of the symptoms of separation. But when they saw Krishna, they came back to life, basically. So after the gopas and the calves return to life, they go out of Agha after Agha is being killed with Krishna. And it is said that the body of Aghasura remained dried itself and served like as a place for further excursions and explorations of the Brajavasis in the future, entertainment for the boys. Now it was a real cave and so many other things. So what's the connection of this with Brahma and Brahma-VIMOHANA-LILA and Brahma-stuti? So it is said that when Aghasura died, one great effulgence went out of Agha's body and was waiting for Krishna to go out. Krishna still was inside Agha with his friends and calves, where they were going out. But the soul, if you will, of Aghasura already has left the body, so was waiting outside the body for Krishna to go out. So Krishna eventually goes out of the body with his friends and calves, and that big effulgence enters Krishna. Sayuja, what we call some form of merging. So interestingly, Aghasura is the only person that was killed by Krishna, like from inside, if you will, with Krishna being inside his body. Generally, Krishna killed all these demons from outside the demons' bodies. But in this case, he was inside. So somehow Aghasura obtained Sayuja in that connection. Krishna was inside, so he entered inside Krishna. Of course, as we spoke these days, the Bhagavatam is not promoting Sayuja. No, it's not the goal that indeed Gaudiyas are not even after any form of mukti, even Sarupya, Salokya, Sarshti, Samipya, what to speak of Sayuja. So interestingly, we don't find in the Bhagavatam examples of sadhakas attaining Brahma Sayuja, only this example of Aghasur, like a demon killed in a particular situation. More specifically, Jiva Goswami mentions that the type of Sayuja, and I don't want to complicate things too much to you here, just mentioning, but there are different forms of Sayuja, not only Brahma Sayuja. Jiva Goswami speaks about Bhagavat Sayuja in his Sandarbhas, but that's another series altogether. And interestingly also, we find some differences of opinion among our acharyas, to continue with this exercise of we agree that they may disagree, not only that we may disagree. So for example, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Baladev Vidyabhushan, or no, let's say Sanatan Goswami, Balavacharya, they say Aghasura obtains Sayuja. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Baladev Vidyabhushan says Aghasura obtains Sarupya Mukti, like a form like Krishna. So there are different forms of mukti. It's not precisely the same, but different acharyas have shared these different perspectives.
So did you say he was the only one?
If we want to take
Other demons, though, didn't they also?
some little like Kamsa, for example, a few ones. Yeah, almost the only one I meant. Like not it's not generally the main examples that we find in the Bhagavatam. So it is said that after this, the soul again of Aghasura was waiting outside the body. It entered Krishna, and that effulgent light is what took Brahma's attention. Somehow it was such an effulgence that Brahma himself was attracted to this, wherever Brahma was. And at the same time, at that moment, all the devas came to earth and started to celebrate the killing of Aghasur and throwing petals and singing. So it's a huge event. And somehow it reached the ears of Brahma. All the devas are on earth celebrating this, what's going on there. Brahma goes, he descended with his swan carrier, and he's seeing all these devas celebrating and this big effulgence that have entered Krishna's body. And Brahma heard, okay, sometimes a sinful person can obtain liberation, but here he's seeing sin personified, Agha, the very personification of sin, attaining such fortune. So Brahma started to be astonished. That's the beginning of Brahma's astonishment. This is nothing in comparison to what will come, the beginning. And on top of that, this liberation was awarded by someone who, a seemingly apparently 5-year-old boy. So that's even more astonishing. Of course, it's Krishna, and Brahma met Krishna, remember, in the beginning of creation, but Krishna didn't appear like a 5-year-old boy as he appeared here. He appeared with a little bit more grown and with more formality. So Brahma was not able to fully connect this Krishna is that Krishna, his guru that he saw at the beginning of creation. But at the same time, he's having Krishna's darshan, because remember, what did Brahma express at the beginning of creation? I want to have a relationship with Sakya, with you. So Krishna said, okay, work in progress. Sometimes, and now at this point, Brahma is receiving a trailer of the world of Sakya Bhava, Krishna with his friends and so on. So at this point, the Sakya samskars, the bhakti samskar, devotional impressions of Brahma towards Sakya Rasa that he received in seed form in the beginning of creation, these samskaras have grown to the point that now the object of Brahma's worship in Sakya Rasa, is taking form in front of him. Krishna is appearing with his full entourage of friends in a full resplendent stage of Sakya Rasa. Krishna is appearing as the perfect object of Sakya Bhav to Brahma here. So this is how it should take place in our own bhajan life. We should practice in such a way. Eventually some affinity will be there, and that will be guided and nourished by Sri Guru and the Vaishnavas. Our bhajan will be becoming more and more focused in a particular prospect of service, and eventually the perfect object that corresponds with that affinity will manifest in our life. We will have darshan. So the locus is in English, locus of our bhav will become manifest in our lives. So that said, remember, this is being narrated by Sukadeva Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj. So then Sukadeva Goswami mentions to Parikshit, when this happened, Krishna was 5 years old, Kumar age. But this whole situation, situation in Braj, was disclosed to the rest of Vrindavan, the other inhabitants, 1 year after. In other words, the Gopas reported that when Krishna already was 6, at that time Krishna was in his Poganda age, no longer in his Kumar age. So Parikshit Maharaj here, and Sukadeva Goswami continues speaking, and Parikshit Maharaj says, no, stop. Please, Gurudev, stop. No. How is that all the Brajavasis get to know about this situation 1 year after? So how to fit that? No? So naturally, Parikshit Maharaj is curious about this fact, so he inquires from Sukadeva Goswami, and Sukadeva Goswami glorifies Parikshit Maharaj's attention, no? and very sharp inquiry, and then he starts to narrate Brahma-VIMOHANA-LILA. So this is basically chapter 12 that I narrated till now, a summary of it. And now we turn to chapter 13, which is Brahma-VIMOHANA-LILA, the bewilderment of Brahma, which is the previous chapter to Brahma-stuti. No problem, some soundtrack, it's okay. So Aghasura is killed. Remember, the boys went to which was the main objective in going to the forest that day? Picnic. So picnics, they're hungry at this point. No? They're waiting, they're hungry. No? So it's time for picnic. No? So the point is, Krishna glorifies a particular spot in Braj that is the ideal for them to start the picnic. So the cows start to drink water nearby, and the picnic started. So Krishna was in the center. There was a Sakya Mandala, a circle of friends, and as my Guru Maharaj likes to call, Krishna was surrounded by a circle of friends. There is many pictures depicting this with Krishna in the center. And it is said that his Satya Sankalpa Shakti, this inner potency that fulfills all of Krishna's desires, made Krishna in such a way that every friend was thinking, he's looking at me. He's looking at me. He's looking at me. And so very similar to the Rasa Lila, where all the gopis were, Krishna is dancing with me. Krishna is dancing with me. No? Like when the Gita, Krishna is saying, no, everywhere are my hands and legs, my eyes and everything. No? It refers to how extends himself to reciprocate with every one of his devotees. So every friend is thinking, Krishna is looking at me. So in one sense, here we find another Rasa Lila. Now, of course, there is not the Rasa Lila romantic one, but Rasa Lila in the form of Krishna being in a circle, and they're dancing with their friends and singing in Sakya Bhav, and Krishna is expanding, and each one is thinking, oh, he's with me, he's with me. And also the Sakya of these friends is kind of consummated at this point. The same way that the Rasa Lila of the gopis is the point where the gopis consummate their romantic relation with Krishna. This Brahma-VIMOHANA-LILA, which is about to happen, is the consummation point for the gopas in their Sakya Bhav. We see something similar also in Gaur Lila when Mahaprabhu is having the Veda Kirtan, where he's dancing and appears in different groups at the same time, and so on. So Krishna's in the center, friends around him, taking their tiffins and and starting to, all excitement, lunch is about to happen. So it is described that the gopas start to taste what they received, and whatever is more tasteful, more tasty, basically. They have will. There's something that they like the most. Again, it's not just whatever Krishna likes the most, I like the most. No, they say, I like this. This is the thing I like the most. But whatever they like the most is always in the context of loving Krishna. So it's not like a separate enjoying a spirit. No? But whatever they like the most, that Krishna likes also. Krishna likes that they like the most, that particular thing they like the most. So they taste, and whatever they find the most tasty, they give that to Krishna. Then taste something else that is not as tasty. Everything is tasty, you can imagine, but maybe not as. They give that to another friends. And whatever is less tasty, which is still tasty, they take it for themselves. No. The perfect thing for themselves, the more perfect for their friends, the most perfect for Krishna. Basically, that's the interaction. So remember, Brahma is around here and around this area. He descended from the swan to check what's this effulgence entering Aga, and now he's witnessing the picnic of Krishna and his friends. And remember, Krishna is Vidhi, very correct, very Paka, knowing how to do everything properly. And his notion of Krishna still is a little bit mixed. Krishna, there's a form of Krishna which resides, Shastra says, in Satyalok, in Brahmalok, called Mahapurush. And everyone is doing offerings to him, but in a more Aishvaric, formal spirit, like Saha, and they offer to the fire. And Krishna is also known as Jajna book in Shastra, he who only eats through Jajna. In this particular Swaha, we are feeding Krishna. But here Brahma is having another darshan of how Krishna eats, in a very pretty informal situation. Krishna is receiving remnants from his friends, which they first taste themselves and then gave to Krishna. And Krishna is tasting himself something, and he is eating with left hand at times. There are some sandwiches there. For eating a sandwich, you probably need the two hands. So we are breaking the rules. We are using your left hand to eat. So Krishna is taking with the left hand, tasting something, putting in the mouth of their friends. Their friends are tasting something. Oh, this is so nice. And they put directly in the mouth of Krishna after they themselves tasting that. So Brahma starts to... This is just the beginning of Brahma's bewilderment. This is nothing, but it starts here, basically. So remember, Brahma is Vidhi, the very perfect personification of correctedness and how to do everything. So Brahma is contemplating this in Mohan. Mohan means bewilderment, not yet Vimohan. Vimohan will be super bewilderment. Now is Vimohan. He has four heads. At this point, one of the four heads is spinning in Mohan. We have three more remaining. Now we will see how this sequence will come on second, third, and fourth eventually. So meanwhile, all this Krishna and his friends are absorbed in the picnic. The calves that went to drink some water started to get farther and farther from the scene. So their friends look this and start to feel afflicted. The cows are getting lost, and they themselves are losing appetite by seeing how the calves are getting lost, because they love the calves in this case. For example, we see how much the gopas love the cows. They are gopas. Gopas means their dharma, their duty is to love and take care of the calves and cows. So in the Kaliya Lila, as you know, Kaliya poisoned the waters of the Jamuna. At one point, the cows drank that water and died. At least temporarily, Krishna will revive them. But when the gopas saw that, they say, our cows died. We have to die. What's the meaning of our life without being proper gopas? And so they run to drink the water themselves also, because they love the cow so much that they felt that we cannot live without them. So this is an important point, which also shows the love that the Brajavasis have for each other. Of course, Krishna is the object of love, the Vishaya, and everyone loves Krishna the most. But it's not that they do not love Krishna among each other. Srila Rupa Goswami calls this Suhrit Rati, which means the love of a friend. How every devotee feels for one another, while having Krishna as the central object of their love. So here we see the Gopas loving the cows. And Krishna saying, again, I'll bring them back. So it is described that Krishna is going to look for the calves, and in his hand he's taking a quantity of rice with yogurt, which interestingly, one of the words for that particular preparation is bhakta. So one famous commentator of Bhagavatam, Hari Suri, he mentions actually Krishna is taking his bhaktas with him in the sense that he's leaving his friends, but he cannot leave his friends. So this rice with yogurt means how he's going with them in that form. He cannot leave his devotees for a moment. He never leaves. Nami bhakta pranashati. He never leaves his devotees. So try to bear in mind the bigger picture and how Krishna is doing all this to bless Brahma with his desire for Sakyarasa. Try to always keep that in mind. Brahma's desire for Sakyabhav, and all this being orchestrated to facilitate that experience. So Krishna is giving gradually to Brahma, who is looking all this, the trailer, Sakyabhav, ongoing Sakyabhav in Braj. So Brahma is looking at all this. Remember, one head is spinning at this time. And he started to think, this cannot be my guru. No, this is not the Krishna I met in the beginning of creation, who instructed me very soberly, gave me Chatusloki, Bhagavatam, Gopal mantra, speaking in Gyan Mudra, very serious, great personality. And here it's in the midst of a picnic, eating with the left hand and eating the remnants of other. No, it cannot be. An imposter, somehow. So Brahma thought, I'll test him. I'll put him to test. So it's really clear for others also not to be cheated, if you will. Because he's not behaving as my guru behaved, basically. So the point is that Brahma, you know what he did there? When Krishna left to look for the cows, Brahma took all the boys and kidnapped them, if you will, and put them in a cave. And he thought he did that. Now we will start to unfold that situation. And then Krishna acted like, what's going on? I cannot find it. I mean, when Krishna went to look for the calves, first Brahma took the calves and put them in the cave. So Krishna was not able to find the calves. He returned to the boys, and he didn't find the boys either, because Brahma also put them in a cave. But actually, it is said that Yogamaya covered Brahma, and actually all the boys and calves were in another prakash or another like portal, if you will, in Vrindavan, not kidnapped by Brahma. And what Brahma took and put in a cave was just an illusory form of them that Brahma thought were the real ones. But the real ones remain in another window of the Lila. There are multi-channels, if you will, like my Guru Maharaj likes to say. If you're in a plane traveling, you can see different people with their screen, and you can choose to see one movie, another movie. All of them are going on simultaneously. You can connect with one or another. So these are different windows. So by Yogamaya's arrangements, this happened. The real boys and calves remain in one window without being touched by Brahma. Brahma was covered thinking he kidnapped the real ones, but actually they were illusory forms. And by Yogamaya's arrangement, also Krishna seemed not to know what was happening. And he himself was, where are the kids? My friends, where are the calves?
What were they doing? What was their reality while they were in the cave?
They remained having picnic as they were doing, waiting for Krishna to return. Yeah, interestingly. So
maybe like Brahma's time.
Basically, sorry?
Like Brahma's time, because he was just gone for a moment.
Yeah, for Brahma, I mean, it's a moment of Brahma's life, but it was a year.
The boys and cows too.
I mean, the boys and cows, it is mentioned that they were absorbed in by Yogamaya's arrangement. Remember, Yogamaya is there to make everything happen. So the kids were there having the picnic, waiting for Krishna. The calves were somewhere else, waiting for Krishna to meet them. But somehow that early year, yes, subjectively speaking, was experienced not as a year, because it will feel like too much. So the point is, again, Krishna is like seems overwhelmed by Yogamaya's arrangement. So that's further overwhelms Brahma, because he sees Krishna overwhelmed. So Brahma thinking, I caught him. No, no, he's an ordinary person, illusion, not knowing what to do, and so on. So, but at one point, Krishna also realizes Brahma is behind this. No? Yogamaya allows Krishna to realize that, if you will, in the context of the Lila. So Krishna, of course, in order to not only teach Brahma a lesson, but further enlighten humans to the nature of who he actually is, Krishna expands himself in replica forms of each one of his friends and calves. So I know it may be difficult, but on one window, if you will, on one prakash, there is the real boys and calves. Another window, there is the illusory boys and calves that Brahma think he kidnapped. And on the Vrindavan, that the boys and calves are not there, Krishna himself manifests on every one of the boys and calves for a whole year, as we will see. And this also shows how well Krishna knew each one of them, because he didn't only expand it in exact replica forms of each of them physically, but also internally with their particular personality and mood and emotion. So all this shows how well Krishna knows the heart of each one of his devotees, that he can perfectly replicate that for a year without anyone noticing that, as we will see. So in this way, Krishna expands in all these forms, and he returns back home with them, which is actually himself expanded. When the day's getting over and they were expected to return from the picnic, remember? So it is said only Krishna knew about this in this particular moment, at this point. So this, interestingly, is another form of Rasa-lila, in which Krishna is expanding, in this case for the Vatsalya camp, as we will know, we will see, for the fathers and mothers of Vrindavan, and for the cows in Vrindavan, who all of them wanted to have Krishna as their child. So Krishna is somehow allowing that to happen by expanding this way for a year. There's another Rasa Lila, in this case for the Vatsalya camp, in the way of Krishna expanding for each of them. So by the influence of Krishna's Yogamaya Lila Shakti, Balaram was at home in his birthday. So Krishna returned, and all these friends and calves who were expansions of Krishna returned, but Balaram did not realize these are Krishna's expansion. He felt these are the calves, these are the boys. So Balaram himself is Vimohan in one form or other. And also the cows, when they see the calves coming, they have some type of Vimohan, because they do not realize this is Krishna. They think, oh, these are our childs. And the parents and the fathers and mothers, the elderly Gopas in Vrindavan, also are Vimohan, because they do not realize our kids are actually Krishna. They feel they're our kids. So interestingly, here Krishna is given a very practical demonstration of Achintya Veda Veda darshan in this Brahma-Vimohan-Lila. How he's one and different at the same time. He can be, he can expand himself. I mean, he himself is Krishna, but he also appears in another forms which still are himself in some way. Achintya Veda Veda means everything is Krishna, but everything is not Krishna at the same time. So the point is, the fathers and mothers, hopefully you have some minutes? Yeah, okay. So every father and every mother in Vrindavan loved their child totally, and every cow in Vrindavan loved their calf totally. But at the same time, all of them, as we mentioned before, they love Krishna on top of that. Everyone loves Krishna first, and then they love everyone else in that connection. So every father and mother in Vrindavan always hanker, I would like to have Krishna as my son. And every cow also thinks, I would like to have Krishna as my calf, if you will, as my son. Because again, all of them love Krishna first, according to their own situation and bhava. So something interesting happened here, because till this point, the love of every cow and every father and mother in Vrindavan was higher for Krishna, and, if you will, lower for their children. But now this distinction disappeared. Why? Because the Gopas and calves were Krishna. So now all the fathers and mothers in Vrindavan start to show a love for their kids that was, I mean, higher than ever. And the cows started to love their calves in a way that they never exhibited such degree of love. They were exhibiting the love they had for Krishna towards these calves and towards their kids. And of course, nobody noticed that because everyone was in that particular mood. Everyone was loving. So all of them were expressing extreme, unusual affection for their children or their calves, respectively. And all this lasted for a year, again, of our years. No? And their affection was not higher from that day on, but was in constant, how do you say, increment? Every day, every day, every day, every day, as the year was passing. So interesting. So like 5 or 6 days before the year finished, it is described in the Bhagavad, that one day in Govardhan, the cows saw their calves in Govardhan, and they ran to them expressing extreme affection. The Bhagavatam describes in detail, like crazy, like running with the others and throwing milk, and the calves ran, and the cows just like kind of started to lick their calves as if they were to swallow them. The Bhagavatam is saying, from brutal affection. Extreme. No? And they start to feed them milk and licking the calf. And these were calves, remember, from 1 year or a little bit more. And they had newer calves, but they were showing extreme affection for those calves. So which is also even like strange. No? Not with the newborn babies, if you will, but for these that had 2 years, 1 year. So again, what's going on? And something similar happened with the gopas, and the elderly gopas and gopis with their sons, their children, who were actually Krishna. They start to embrace them and to cry while embracing and to show like extreme affection. So Balaram was seeing all this, like observing that this extreme display of affection, and he began to consider what's going on here. Because not only because of what he's seeing, but he himself was feeling, I'm also attracted to these calves. And Balaram at this point, he's not a cow and he doesn't have calves. He doesn't have children, but he was feeling some special attraction towards these children and calves. So, like the type of attraction he has for Krishna. So Balaram said, what's going on? I only feel this for Krishna. Why I'm feeling this for all these other people? And why all these father, mothers, cows are exhibiting this degree of affection? Because the idea is everyone should love Krishna more than their children and than their calves. That's the standard. But now they are saying, Balaram is saying they are loving their child as they love Krishna. The cows are loving their calves in the same way they love Krishna. This never happened. Always Krishna was in the top one, if you will. So the whole thing is inverted here. So it is said that at that moment, Yogamaya started to withdraw her influence of Balaram. It is said that Balaram didn't tell all this, Krishna didn't tell all this to Balaram when they returned 1 year before. Because also he didn't want Balaram, this is another way of explaining by the acharyas. If Krishna would have told Balaram, actually all these boys are me, Balaram would have felt lots of separation from his actual friends like Sridham and others who were on the other Prakash in Vrindavan for a whole year. Some acharyas explain like that. No? So the point is that eventually Balaram realized what's actually taking place. And he requested Krishna, like, please explain this to me in detail. So Krishna did. He explained this in detail to Balaram. So now Balaram is one more that knows what's going on. And by this point, Brahma had left to his planet after the so-called kidnapping. And at some point he returned after a few seconds, basically, we could say, of his time, which is a year of ours, to see what's going on here. And he realized that the dynamics in Vrindavan continue as usual. There's no problem. All the kids are there, the calves are there, and he's like, but I kidnapped them all. All of them are in the cave, basically. So the point is that what's going on? So he goes and goes to cave, he put these forms, and he finds the forms there, which were illusory manifestations of the kids and the calves. And then he goes back to Vrindavan, and he sees that the calves and the kids are there. And he goes running back to the cave and sees that the cows and the calves and the kids are there. He's thinking, maybe Krishna is running very quickly and taking the calves and boys from the cave to Vrindavan, from Vrindavan to the cave. But it's impossible. It's too fast. How he can do that? So at this point, two heads of Brahma start spinning. Not only one. So Mohan starts to become Vimohan. Vimohan means Vishesh Mohan. Vishesh means special type of bewilderment. So Brahma is thinking, what's going on? Maybe Krishna is doing this, taking one to another place, to another. So what happens at that moment when Brahma is two heads spinning, as you know? Every one of these forms that were expansions of Krishna, each one of the friends, each one of the calves, start to show themselves to Brahma as expansions of Krishna. Because at this point, Brahma didn't know they were expansions of Krishna. They thought they are the kids and the calves. So all these forms, each calf and each gopa, showed themselves before Brahma as Narayan, as expansions of Krishna, and as Narayan. So the idea is Narayan is an expansion of Krishna. This will be a very important point that the Brahma-stuti will make. No? Narayan is an expansion of Krishna and not vice versa. Because generally the idea many times is Krishna is an avatar of Narayan. But the Bhagavatam is establishing Krishna's two Bhagavan. So yeah. And this Brahma-VIMOHANA-LILA will play out that line more than any other section of the Bhagavatam. So again, all these forms are expansions of Krishna, and they show us themselves as Narayan, who is an expansion of Krishna. Showing Chaturbhuj, 4 arms as Narayan, and other ornaments that Narayan classically wears. Very detailed description in the Bhagavatam about this. So you can imagine Brahma at this point. So again, Narayan as an expansion of Krishna. Krishna says, Nagitaham Sarvasya Prabhu. Everything emanates from me, including Narayan. He's showing this now. Krishna is there, and thousands of Narayans are emanating from him. Very Aishvaric section of the Bhagavatam. This is the highest section where Aishvarya is presented. From Krishna, unlimited Narayans are appearing. Not only Narayan appearing, but we will see different personalities are worshipping that form, those forms of Narayan, including different Brahmas. So you can imagine Brahma seeing that. Try to enter into the situation. You are there, all these calves and boys start to appear as Narayan with all that Aishvarya. They're worshipped by different great personalities, different Brahmas with even more heads than the 4-headed Brahma, worshipping each of those Narayans, and Brahma witnessing all that. At this point, 3 heads of Brahma spinning. We have one remaining one. It's coming. So this lasts for a moment, and Brahma is totally, again, bewildered, and he becomes astonished. I mean, he collapses, basically. He doesn't know how to understand what's going on, because how to understand that. So he becomes astonished and silent, and just dumbfounded, contemplating, power glassed what's going on in front of me. So at this moment, Yogamaya retires the curtain, if you will, of this Aishvarya, and all these forms suddenly disappear. All these Narayans disappear, all the Brahmas, all the Aishvarya disappears, and the only thing that Brahma sees now is Krishna. As he saw Krishna right in the beginning, before he tried to kidnap all of them, when Krishna was with a piece of rice and yogurt and looking for his friends and cows and calves, like bewildered. This is what Brahma is seeing now. Everything disappeared, and just Krishna remained, like looking for his friends and calves, sitting alone with a morsel of food in his hand, searching everywhere here and there. So this was even too much more for Brahma, much more bewilderment. At this point, the 4 heads of Brahma are spinning like nothing. So Brahma-VIMOHANA-LILA, that's the name of this section. The B-Mohan, the B of the Vimohan now is with capital letters. So it is said that at this point, Brahma, totally overwhelmed, he was on his swan, remember, and he falls to the ground in Vrindavan. The Bhagavatam describes that. It is said that the Devas never touch the ground on earth, like implying they do not belong to this planet. They just float, and they come here only from the air. But here Brahma is falling on the floor of Braj, not any ground. And he broke that rule, that the devas do not touch the air. He just fell in Dandavat, showing, I'm living up my prestige as a demigod. I'm leaving all this consideration. I'm the greatest demigod. I put my head on this particular ground. So he fell like a rod at the feet of Krishna with his 4 heads. And he started to offer Abhishek to the feet of Krishna with his tears, to wash the feet of Krishna with his tears. It is said that he was taking turns to offer pranam with his 4 heads. So with one head, falling, doing Abhishek, rising, falling again with the other head for a long time, again, falling again, 3rd head, and in this way, he fell at the time. So to conclude today, I would like to read the last verse of the chapter 13, which is just before starting the chapter 14 with the Brahma-stuti, which basically describes this scene of Brahma crying at the feet of Krishna. So verse 64 of chapter 13 says, then rising very gradually and weeping his 2 eyes, remember Brahma has 8 eyes because he has 4 heads, but only he's weeping 2 eyes because the other 6 eyes are still brimming with tears. So he's taking turns for that, so doing that. So thus, then, rising very gradually and wiping his two eyes, Lord Brahma looked up at Mukunda. Lord Brahma, his head bent low, his mind concentrated, and his body trembling, very humbly began, with faltering words, to offer praises to Sri Krishna. So this is a little bit the background for Brahma-stuti, for us to really appreciate the context and the scenario in which these prayers, from where they will be presented. So here begins Brahma-stuti, which will be 14th chapter of the Bhagavatam. But as I mentioned you, our next class, the day after tomorrow, we won't start with the first verse. I would like to spend, if you give me your blessings and permission, spend one more class trying to analyze a little bit further philosophical implications of this section that we have just studied. Brahma-Vimohana-LILA, this point of Krishna's Tu Bhagavan Sayang, of Krishna being the source of Narayan, and many other, even some controversies that are surrounding this Brahma-Vimohana-LILA. Some persons considering that this section of the Bhagavatam is interpolated, and how to show that that's not the fact. And some ideas before we are fully in place to start with verse 1. So that we will see the day after tomorrow, and then we will start verse 1 and so on. So I think we will, if anyone has a question, whether in person here or online, since this class and maybe the next ones may extend a little bit more than usual, we can consider making questions. For those online, can present them in the thread, and I try to reply to them these days, or also we will have some Q&A these days here, so we can also present that, so as to not overextend, if you agree. So thank you so much for your time. Sri La Gurudev ki jai, Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Sri Sri Gaur Nityananda ki jai, Sri Sri Brajanath Haladara ki jai, Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Sri Brahma-stuti ki jai, Sri Brahma-Vimohana-LILA ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Preman. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaura Haribo.